I'm Portuguese, which from the south of Portugal, countryside, where people tell us, don't even think that you're gonna go very far in your life. Like you're gonna be a mother, and a mother and working a normal job, and your husband is gonna bring money home. That's like the philosophy of Portugal. A little bit is very machist, but since early age, I was not empowered to think like that. I was a swimmer, and then when you are an athlete, you are driven to, if you train very hard, then when you get a competition, then you try your efforts in the past, and then you either do well or not according to how much you trained. And then I went abroad in the Erasmus program. I went to study in Saint-Étienne in France. Erasmus is a program of exchange that you can go 6 months to an university in Europe, and someone from other universities will come to yours. And then I went there. So then after that, I applied for a job in Berlin. Again, some of my fellows, colleagues at the Erasmus program, they went to Berlin for their internships. And I just went along one of their trips, and I did a meeting, an interview, the first interview of my life. I just can I show you my portfolio? Back in the days, it was these big portfolios printed. I came with my portfolio. I was like, this is what I do, this is what I like to do. And they were like, okay, when you want to start? I was like, what? And was at Universal Music Berlin, to do design for the covers of the CDs. I was never expected that they would even consider me. So I was dedicating my life to the company. I was working from 9 a.m. till midnight because I loved it so much. So I started doing covers for the CDs, but soon there was a guy doing animation, and sooner rather than later, the guy was always working alone until midnight, and I had no friends in Berlin. I didn't speak the language, so all I had was my colleagues at work. We were about 6 or 5 or 7. So I would sit next to him and see him doing animations, like, oh, that's so amazing what you're doing. I would love to learn. He's like, okay, here's 3 DVDs, learn it. I'm gonna give you a project. I was like, what? So the DVDs were like 300 hours of tutorials, which I would go home I started going home at 9 p.m., watch the tutorials until 1 or 2 in the morning, and then sleep very fast, and then wake up at 7 with my breakfast doing tutorials. So in 3 months, I learned After Effects, which is this software to do animations. And then he gave me a project from Mariah Carey, because you are a girl, and the boy editing was all boys. So the project would all be like the boy style, And they say, okay, this is Mariah Carey, you are girly with your flowers and stuff, do your thing. So I loved it, and he gave me 1 month, a project that would usually take 1 week. He gave me 1 month to do because I was starting. You can imagine, I didn't sleep for that 1 month. But then I did an animation it was a 30 seconds animation of the CD and a little bit of Mariah Carey saying stuff in German, and I would have to do animations. And I just killed whatever I wanted. So first of all, to have total freedom to do whatever I wanted was amazing. And second, to be given the responsibility, even though I didn't know the skill, to be given the trust and responsibility to produce something. So I did it, I did everything I learned in the DVDs I put there. So it was kind of basic. But at the end, he delivered. He did final fixings, and then he delivered to Mariah Carey, and she wrote back an email saying, I love this video so much more than everything else you've been producing. Because I did flowers, I did colors and butterflies. I used all her memes. Yes, all her girl stuff. And she loved it. And the boy would never do this, Yeah. So I was that was my first lesson thinking, we need diversity in whatever you do, because we always have clients that are males and female and other genders, and the ultimate goal is to produce content and products that will speak for everyone, not just for men. So that was the first learning that, women, we need to step up. So they at the end of the year contract, they said, okay, so we want to hire you. And I was like, okay, how much money do you want to give me? 250 euros. I was like, what? My house costs 500, and then I need to eat. And then that's I don't have anything to do with their cars, but all the bosses drove Maseratis and Ferraris. The company was doing very well. And we had a company in Berlin and in Hamburg. And they was like, look, my house is $500, so at least 1,000. And I said, no, 750, just to go against my word, From 250, he passed to 750. I was like, okay, with 250 euros, I cannot eat for an entire month. Could you? And he was like, no, but I'm not going to give you more. And I was like, okay, so I'm not staying. And that decision took, it was very hard for me to say no to Universal Music, my first job. But they had to respect me, And I was like, this is crazy. They are not respecting me. So I swallowed this huge frog, which was I want to work here and I could work for free. but I need to be respected. And it was not about the money, it was about the respect. So this was the first time I quit on a job that I loved because they didn't respect me. So the only lesson I want you guys to take is always make yourself valuable and never let people take advantage of you. So this is one big lesson that it was hard to take, but I recommend you to always value yourself. And one thing I learned recently, we have more power than we think. This is like, I'm gonna tattoo that in my arm, because you have more power than you think. Especially if you are qualified, you are a hard worker, which I believe all of you are. You have more power than you think. Don't ever think that you have to beg for work. And then I saw something in Europe, which was closer from home. The school is called Hyper Island, which it's in Stockholm. They started in Karlskrona, which is a prison, an island like a prison, where they did the school there. And it's based on IDEO. It's all about multidisciplinary teams. So developers, designers, in that case it was copywriters, not journalists, because it was towards advertisement, work together to come up with ideas, storytelling, campaigns, client engagement, and then audience engagement. So you would wear all the hats for 2 years, working with real clients. Imagine Coca-Cola would come to you and say, we need a campaign for the Christmas. And together you would think about how to tell the story, how to reach audience, what's the goals with the campaign, etc. So I got in contact with the chief of technology of the Guardian newspaper, which for me was like a dream that I never dared to dream that I could ever be there. First of all, as a designer, I did not think, and this is so ridiculous that now I think about this, I didn't know as a designer I could work at the newspaper. I thought only journalists could. That was my mindset. So when I got given this interview, and he gave me 3 hours of talking, because I was like this, tell me everything, like a sponge. And he was like, la, 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 la. He loved the attention of having someone really keen to learn what the Guardian is doing. And then he was very kind to me and say, at the end he was like, Mariana, you are so excited about this, why don't you work here? Like, you would love to work here. I was like, you kidding me? I never thought that would be possible. Like, you asking me, like, you ask a blind man if he wants to see? Like, of course I want. I was like, when can I start? And he's like, okay, let me put you into HR interviews, and then with the supposed to be your boss. I was like, do it. So first project, guess who? So Assange was passing in the corridor. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what WikiLeaks was. And then they said, you're going to design the WikiLeaks data visualization of the story. I was like, okay, whatever that is. And then they were like, you cannot tell this to anyone. I was like, wow, you guys here are very like extreme, right? I thought this is media. People are very like silent. And I was like, I called my mom in Portugal. Mom, I'm working on this project called WikiLeaks. My mom was like, shut up. I was like, what? I don't understand what this is. You know, my English, like the English of London, is very hard to understand. I had a hard time. In the beginning, I was like, what is WikiLeaks? Like, I didn't understand very well. And to catch up with the accents was a bit hard. So I was like, my mom was like, just shut up, do your work, and shut up, and be careful. You know, and there was this room called Top Secret, do not enter. I was like, this is ridiculous, you know? Like, printed on an A4 paper, you know, very ridiculous. I was like, this is just so fun. Anyway, I was so happy to be at the Guardian, and the offices are amazing, all open space. So we all work open space with windows everywhere. You see King's Cross. It was amazing. So then, some months later, the New York Times started posting animation videos. And then the editor executive came to me and said, oh, what about that video? Like, so you know how to do videos, right? Like, now the New York Times is doing, and they are doing very well. So we want to do it as well. Can you do once a week, one? I was like, it's impossible. By myself, I was like designing, editing, animating, everything, you know? I was like, per week it's too much. I would have to work like 20 hours per day. Anyway, they then gave me a team, and then for special projects I would do animations. So we started doing animations finally. And then on 2012, the January like 1st or 2nd, they published the animation about the games. And that was by far the most seen project I ever done. Crazy, right? And 2 years late, now I look at it and it's like so old school, you know, like really old school. But I was happy that at the end the project saw the light of the sun, you know. When they hired me, they you know, about salary. They wanted to give me by the time 28,000, which would be the most I ever done in my life. But seeing and having the experience of living there for a month, I knew I needed at least 35, like to feel comfortable, to get a house a little bit closer from work, and eventually to take the underground. And to negotiate from 28 to 35 was quite hard, but I was like, guys, I'm devoting my life here. my family and friends are all in Portugal. I'm here alone just because I love the Guardian. I will devote my life here. You will have the most focused employee you can ever ask for, but I need this money just because I need to live closer. I need to rent a house. Stuff like London is extremely expensive. Like the rent is insane. So imagine a one bedroom would cost 15 or 1,600,000 pounds, which is almost $3,000. It's insane, and you don't make that much money there. So I was like, and then they end up agreeing. So then I started becoming a mentor at the Guardian, organizing these Guardian master classes, which was, a bunch of us that have different skills. We would come together, and for a weekend we would welcome people from like readers that are keen to learn design, development, or how to write a novel or fiction, everything. So we would organize this for the entire 2 weekends, and this was like a very nice income project for the Guardian. Everybody that wanted to come for a weekend would pay £300 for the weekend. Imagine, times 200 people per weekend. We would do this once a month, and I loved doing this because first of all, I would deal with lots of women that wanted to learn the craft, and hopefully we could hire. And secondly, because I love leading sessions for training, because I love training myself. I love to get training. And then I was like, and we need to do something more to bring more women into the team. We were 180 developers. I'm not a developer, but I was working with developers. And there were 3 women, from which I was one of them. And I was like, the men were very, very kind, inclusive and stuff. But at the end of the day, we are not represented. So I was like, we need to change this. Like, we are a newspaper. We are talking to the world, and the world is made of 50% men, 50% women. And then, guess what? This was New Year, and I got the International Center for Journalists to write me an email and say, look, we saw your work at The Guardian. We would like to know if you'd like to work in Latin America and do something like in the terms that you are doing. I was like, this is heaven. This is sent from heaven to me to help me. And I was like, you know what? So I took one entire day. It was vacation for Christmas vacation. I wrote an entire page with my own. I'm not an editor, so I don't know how to write like properly perfect English. So I write very orally style. My thing is more visual. And I wrote my oral style and saying this is the things I want to do. And then they came back to me, they interviewed me, and they say, you got it. So basically, they told me to put all my dreams in a page, and I wrote like 6 or 7 dreams that I had. One of them was to create a corpus of women, journalist women that want to become more digital savvy. A little bit of what happened to me when I went to Stockholm, I became a little bit more digital savvy, and then everything I learned back in Berlin, that women need to have voice, and third, that women need to have leadership skills and not be passed by whatever system is in place. So all of those things, I was like, I am a woman, I'm exactly the case scenario for this thing, but in Latin America, I'm sure there's a ton of women like me, which are forced not to believe they can go forward, and never have a hard time managing salaries and speaking up and getting their rights for themselves, and that are disconnected for technology like I was. I want to work in those terms. And then I created Chicas Poderosas, which, what is this, right? So it's exactly this. It's how can I, and everything based on my mentor, what he did to me, both at the Universal, like my mentor that gave me the DVDs, that was his German style of teaching me, and my English mentor that sat with me and taught me everything how to do design. So Chicas Poderosas is exactly that. And how I do it, I bring people that I've worked with from different newsrooms. It can be New York Times, not very often we have New York Times, but now we have women from New York Times video department that are amazing. And The Guardian, NPR, ProPublica, you name it, like big newspapers, both in US and in Europe, that are doing great stuff. And now more and more in Latin America. They are doing great stuff that I know the people personally, on the personal level, and I know they are good trainers. And I ask them to come to Latin America. I get the funding, I do the project, I write the proposal for our sponsors. I need $10,000 to fly these 3 folks and to get them accommodation and food for 3 or 4 days. Then these people come and they mentor for 3 or 4 days without me having to give them a salary, which is a very important point. This is an NGO, it's not for profits. All the money I get is to pay the costs. And then we get together a group like this, maybe from 80 to 100, 150 people. Usually it's targeted to women, but some men come, which is, I think, very interesting because this conversation cannot be only happening among women. We need to involve men. It needs to not be a difference making. If it's all about skills, all about what you bring to the company, you should not get less paid, because by assumption, women are less professional or less capable or what, you know? So I want to change that, starting with myself. And then secondly, I wanted to train women to become what I want to be in my life, and what maybe they want to be, or whatever they want to be, I want to help them get there. So Chicas Poderosas started in Chile, and it was me going to Hacks and Hackers events, but instead of naming it Hacks and Hackers, naming it Chicas Poderosas. We had 120% more women attendance. It was a room full of women and, you know, a handful of men. In difference, like from Hacks and Hackers chapters, which is like 95% men and 5 women that know how to code. All the other women that wanted to attend, they think, my skills are not good enough. Maybe I'm going to be judged. They're going to make fun of my lack of skills. Like, I'm not going out there. You know, it's not comfortable. So Chicas Poderosas is exactly the place for women to feel comfortable with whatever skill level they have. From 0 to 100, everybody can help each other. So we do trainings, like we bring these mentors from, for instance, I remember now, NPR. We have Brian Boyer and Kainaz, which are leaders of the visuals team. And they come and they say how they did, for instance, this project called The Planet Money. All the steps. So we have designers, developers, journalists, editors, and then people thinking how to tell this story. Today, before coming here, I was just posting for Peru. It's starting now, like as we speak. Peruvian session of chapter of Chicas is starting, and they're going to train women how to do reporting on elections and trying to track where the bad parts are, bad connections, corruption, everything. So they're on top of things, you know. And so Latin America took me 1 year. So I was one year as a fellow of International Center for Journalists, which I recommend you guys to see. International Center for Journalists. They have fellowships all over, and ICFJ. So I was working in Costa Rica in a paper called La Nación, and we just did for the first time the first cross departments project. So we got together in a table like this, like 20 of us from different departments, from business, fashion, culture, environment, come together, journalists, developers, and designers, to come up with new ways of storytelling. Then we had the Obama visit there, and we did an interactive about it with video. It was so cool, you know, and they love to work together, because you become so much stronger if you have the opportunity to work with people with different skills from you that can really empower the entire story. So it was like, I was just there doing these trainings for 1 day or 2 or 3, and then after that I got hired by Fusion. Okay, I'm very good friends with the director of digital of Univision, and as you know, my CEO Isaac Lee is now stepped up as a chief of on Univision News in digital. Yeah, it's amazing. And Isaac Lee is someone who has this big vision. I would like to think that I have the big vision, like in a small scale comparing to him, but we think alike. So, for example, 7 weeks ago, I was thinking I want to do Chicas Poderosas in Mediterranean, and then I was planning to do a story about the migration crisis in Mediterranean. And then I just thought, like, sitting here in Miami, getting stories from whoever is going to give me in second hand is not as accurate to do as if I go there and get the stories myself or get in contact directly with the source. So with other girls, we start thinking, why don't we do Chicas Poderosas Mediterranean and get together like a group of chicas from South Europe, East Europe, and North Africa to talk about the migration crisis. And I just wrote a paper about it. So I sent an email to Isaac Lee, my CEO, and said, look, I would love to do this event the Chicas Poderosas event in Mediterranean. I believe the migration crisis now, it's like huge, and it's not a European problem, it's a world problem. We are all part of it, one way or another. I would love to cover that, because I think media overall has not been doing a great job. Like, all the media that do stories about the migration crisis in Europe, they do according to their national agenda, you know, in different countries. There's not an overall picture of the story. So I wanted to go deep. So I said, look, I'm gonna organize an event of 2 weeks with Chicas Poderosas in Rome, because we're gonna team up with this Coalition for Human Rights, which has 30 NGOs working together. So we're gonna have access to data, to stories, to people, to refugees. Do you want me to leverage Fusion's name? I asked him like this. And by the way, he's the budget that I put together that I have to get this money, which was around $300,000 for 2 weeks to fly in 100 people from all across the world. And you know what? During that night, he replied to me saying, I'm in. Fusion is gonna have 1/3 of the budget, giving you like sponsoring, and Univision another third. You get the third. Let's do this. We established a mini newsroom with people that were invited for the event, and mainly Chicas Poderosas run the entire thing. So some people were running the Facebook, some people were running Twitter, some people were running Instagram. Because of someone running Twitter, the United Nations and the Red Cross, they saw what we are doing, and they came to the event. So it's extremely powerful. So since then, like after the event in Stanford, which took place in June 2015 this year, after 3 weeks, they started Chicas Poderosas Rio de Janeiro, teaming up with the Olympic Committee, because one of our girls is director of communications of the Olympic Committee in Brazil. So they teamed up with the committee, and they did an event just with women. Actually, a couple of men came, but to tell stories about Paralympics. You know, Paralympics is a story that is very rarely told. Yeah. Olympics, they talk a lot about the Olympic athletes, but the Paralympic athletes are secondary. Not everybody knows how the categories are divided, etc. So with 50 women there, one day we did 5 projects. From which 3 of them were posted on the committee website, and the winner team, which was like a team of 6 or 7, won. And the prize was, you're going to come and work at the Olympic Committee in July 2016 to report on Paralympics. You're going to go on the field and report. And you're going to be given a course of technical English, because the committee, international committee, speaks all in English, and they are Brazilian. So they learn technical English. So this is like huge. And this was the committee offering the course. And then after that, some girls from Colombia and Costa Rica got together with the girls from Argentina, and they started Chicas Poderosas Argentina. In Buenos Aires, we had 350 women for 3 days learning how to code from scratch. That was amazing, it was like boom. And then Mexico, which took place at the same weekend as the Argentinian. That's why I went to Brazil, and then I was there just to welcome them and to help. Document for social media, because they did everything by themselves. I didn't need to go there. And then Argentina, I couldn't go because I went to Mexico, and Mexico in 2 hours, they opened up the registration. In 2 hours, they got 80 people. In 2 hours, they had to close immediately after 2 hours because they didn't have more room. But look, this shows the need that exists, and now people are understanding. Chicas is really opening doors. And then another thing that I wish someone would have done for me, but thank God I had this opportunity in life to get a work experience for 1 month at The Guardian. That happened because I was there and the volcano started, it was luck. And I want to create this luck for someone else. So I started to do these fellowships, which is sending one girl to, imagine we send one girl from Argentina to ProPublica for 1 month to learn with Scott Klein and the team how to do investigative journalism and what kind of tools and technology they use. So the girl is now learning Ruby on Rails, which she understood exactly what's the needs for that. And she says, I think as a journalist, if I learn this, it's going to help me a lot. I don't believe that we need to be developers, designers, and journalists all together, but I believe that we need to understand what PHP is, which is like the code that Facebook uses, that when you scroll down, it just uploads whatever you are seeing in that moment. So it doesn't take lots of time to upload. That's called PHP, which is needed for Facebook kind of projects. And then JavaScript and HTML, what that is and what is it need for. Like JavaScript is for transitions, is for you to do interactive stuff. This is what my team works on, JavaScript and HTML. For us to have a basic understanding of HTML and JavaScript and CSS, which is the styling for the page, it's very important. It doesn't mean that you guys have to know how to build your own website, but it's important for you to understand what HTML is, what JavaScript is, understand how long does it take to do a given project. So at Chicas Poderosas, what we do, we give you the project, and then we deconstruct the project. And we say, we use these technologies, it took us this time, and this is how we started, and this is how we continue, and this is how everybody in the team was contributing with. As the sooner you know the process, the sooner you can replicate it yourself.